My name is Monica Davis and I'm 61 years old. Last night my own son, Ethan, assaulted me, leaving me bleeding over a bowl of unsalted soup. While I lay on the kitchen floor, cleaning my own blood with a ragged cloth, he calmly retreated to his room, shut the door and slept soundly as if nothing had transpired. As if beating his mother was the most commonplace occurrence imaginable. This morning I awoke with the body aching from the trauma, bruises blooming across my arms, and a cut on my lip that still throbs with every word I speak. But the physical pain is secondary to the profound humiliation. The most agonizing aspect is the realization that my son, the child I nurtured with unwavering love and devotion, the child for whom I sacrificed everything, views me as nothing more than his personal servant. My existence, in his eyes, apparently serves solely to cater to his needs and remain silent. I rose at 5 a.m. as I do every morning. Ethan was already at the kitchen table, impeccably dressed in his gray suit, engrossed in his phone. He didn't even acknowledge my presence as I entered the room. Instead, he issued his usual curt command without looking up. "Breakfast. Hurry up. I have an important meeting." It was as if the previous night's events, the screaming, the insults, the threats to cast me out onto the street if I weren't his mother, never happened. The casual cruelty was breathtaking. I prepared his scrambled eggs precisely as he prefers: 3 spoonfuls of shredded cheese, 2 slices of perfectly toasted bread, and black coffee without sugar. Every element had to be flawless, down to the minutest detail, because any deviation, no matter how insignificant, triggers his volatile temper. And when Ethan explodes, I invariably bear the brunt of his rage. While he ate, the sound of a key turning in the front door lock echoed through the house. It was Savannah, his young, elegant wife, a woman who greets me with a perfunctory smile and treats me as if I'm utterly invisible. She entered, radiant in a light green dress and high heels, bestowed a kiss on Ethan's cheek, and settled at the table as if she owned the place. "Good morning, Mrs. Davis," she chirped, employing the saccharine tone she reserves for moments when Ethan is present. "How are you this morning?" I yearned to confide in her, to reveal the bruises inflicted by her husband, the agony of my battered back, the unbearable weight of my despair. But instead I forced a smile and responded, "I'm fine, thank you. Are you going to have some breakfast, Savannah?" I asked. Ethan shot me a warning glare, his eyes conveying a silent threat. One wrong word, and tonight will be worse. Then, with the disingenuous smile he reserves for public consumption, he interjected, "Look, Mom, I bought you this new makeup. It's perfect for covering those little scrapes you got when you tripped last night." Little scrapes. That's what he calls the brutal assault, as if it were a mere accident, as if I had tripped and fallen onto his fist entirely of my own volition. I accepted the makeup wordlessly. It was expensive foundation, the kind that costs more than $50. He likely purchased it with my retirement money, as he controls my entire bank account. He claims it's for my own good, asserting that at my age, I can't manage my finances independently. The reality is I haven't seen a single penny of my pension in 2 years. Savannah gazed at him with those adoring, shining eyes. "You're so thoughtful, honey. Always taking care of your mom." If only she knew. If only she knew that her seemingly perfect husband, the successful executive who manages multi-million-dollar accounts at the office, returns home each night to unleash his frustration on me. After breakfast, Ethan donned his red tie, grabbed his briefcase, and leaned in to whisper in my ear while Savannah touched up her makeup. "Remember what we talked about last night? If you ever open your mouth, if you tell anyone what happens here, you're going to regret it. No one will believe you. You're just a crazy old woman living off her son's charity." His words were a chilling threat, searing themselves into my soul. They left together, hand in hand, portraying the image of a picture-perfect couple. I watched from the window as they climbed into Ethan's new car, a black sedan costing over $400,000. My money. All of it purchased with my money. When the house fell silent, I sank into a kitchen chair and wept. These weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage, of utter helplessness. I know I must act, but I don't know how. I can't continue living this way, but I'm paralyzed by the seemingly insurmountable task of escaping this nightmare. I remained in that silent kitchen for hours, watching the sunlight gradually traverse the floor tiles. This house was once my sanctuary. I bought it 30 years ago with the money I meticulously saved during my career as an executive secretary at the law firm of Sullivan & Associates. 40 years dedicated to that demanding job. Rising at 5 a.m. every day, always punctual, always organizing the lives of others. Never did I imagine I'd end up a prisoner in my own home. It all began 3 years ago, when Ethan divorced his first wife. He showed up at my doorstep one night, a suitcase in hand, wearing that lost boy expression that always melted my heart. "Mom, I need to stay here for a while, just until I sort out my financial situation," he pleaded. He claimed the divorce had left him bankrupt, homeless, and destitute. Like the foolish, overly generous mother I've always been, I opened my door and my heart. "Of course, son, this is your home too." How naive I was. I didn't realize I was inviting the devil to reside with me. The initial months were uneventful. Ethan rose early, went to work, returned in the evening, and we dined together. He even helped with grocery shopping. I genuinely believed we were finally establishing the close mother-son relationship I'd always longed for. But slowly, insidiously, things began to unravel. It started with minor criticisms. "Mom, this food is too salty." "Mom, why don't you clean the bathroom better?" "Mom, your clothes are too wrinkled." It's embarrassing. These hurtful remarks, however, I rationalized, attributing them to the stress of his divorce. Then, he started meddling in my finances. "Mom, at your age, you shouldn't be handling so much cash. It's dangerous. Let me help you with your accounts." And like the gullible fool I am, I granted him access to my bank account. It was simply to assist me, I reasoned. He's my son. He would never harm me. How terribly wrong I was. Within 6 months, Ethan had complete control over my money. My $1,200 monthly pension was directly deposited into his account. He provided me with a paltry $20 a week for personal expenses, treating me as if I were a child receiving an allowance. When I questioned him about the remaining funds, he'd calmly reassure me, "Mom, I'm investing your savings to help them grow. Trust me." Then Savannah entered the picture. A woman 25 years his junior, with a dazzling smile and ambition that radiated from her like an aura. Ethan met her at his office, where she worked as a marketing assistant. 6 months later, they were married in a lavish ceremony costing over $100,000. Naturally, paid for with my money. Since Savannah's arrival, everything has worsened. Ethan began treating me like a household servant. "Mom, make dinner for Savannah and me, something elegant. She's used to fine things." "Mom, clean the guest bathroom. Important people are coming over." "Mom, wash this shirt by hand. It's too expensive for the washing machine." And I always complied. I obeyed out of fear of his anger, fear of him acting on his threats to evict me from my own house. Even though the house is legally mine, Ethan persuaded me to add his name to the deed for security, claiming, "Mom, just in case something happens to you." The violence commenced a year ago. Initially, it was accidental shoves, then pinches on my arm when I failed to meet his exacting standards. "You're driving me crazy, Mom. You're too slow." Then it escalated to blows on the shoulder, slaps when the food wasn't to his liking, and punches to my back if my cleaning wasn't swift enough. But last night was different. Last night he crossed an unforgivable line. I prepared vegetable soup for dinner. It was Tuesday and we always have a light meal on Tuesdays. I meticulously set the table, served the toasted bread and the steaming soup. Everything was perfect. Ethan arrived home weary from work, sat at the table without acknowledging me, took a spoonful and his face contorted with rage. "What the hell is this?" he bellowed, spitting the soup back into the bowl. "It has no salt. It's as bland as water." I immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, son. I forgot the salt. Let me add a little." But it was too late. Ethan rose like a wild animal, grabbed the bowl of soup, and hurled it in my face. The hot liquid seared my cheek. Shards of porcelain sliced my lip. "You're useless," he screamed, seizing my arm with such force that I knew a bruise would surely form. 40 years working as a secretary and you can't even make a decent soup. You're pathetic." He shoved me against the kitchen wall. My head struck the tile, and stars exploded behind my eyes. But he didn't stop there. He slapped me repeatedly, my ears buzzing for hours afterward. "Savannah is bringing her friends over for lunch tomorrow," he snarled as I shielded my face with my hands. "I want you to prepare something special and you'd better make sure it's perfect because if you make me look bad, if you show even one sign of how pathetic you are, I swear to God I'll kick you out of this house." Then, as he always does after assaulting me, he calmed down. He bent down, helped me up, and dabbed the blood from my lip with a napkin. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said in a soothing voice. "I just get so frustrated seeing you like this. I know you can do better. It's all for your own good, so you'll learn." And then he went to sleep peacefully, as if nothing had happened. I remained awake all night in the kitchen, cleaning up the remnants of the soup and the shattered porcelain from the floor. Each tiny piece I picked up felt like a fragment of my own shattered dignity. My lip continued to bleed, but the pain transcended the physical. It was something deeper, something darker. It was the agonizing realization that my own son, the person I loved most in this world, had become my tormentor. As I cleaned, memories flooded back, reminding me of how we arrived at this point. Ethan wasn't always this way. As a boy, he was sweet and affectionate. His father abandoned us when he was 8, and from then on it was just him and me against the world. I worked double shifts for years to provide him with everything he desired. I enrolled him in the best private school I could afford, bought him designer clothes, paid for piano lessons, English tutoring, anything he asked for. Perhaps that was my mistake. Perhaps I spoiled him so much that he never learned the value of respect, of effort, of genuine love. I always gave him everything on a silver platter, without asking for anything in return. And now, 35 years later, I am paying the price for those decisions. At dawn, I heard his footsteps descending the stairs. My heart pounded, as it always does when he's near. It's incredible how a person can live in a state of perpetual anxiety in their own home. He entered the kitchen, already dressed in his black suit, checking his phone as usual. This time he didn't even request breakfast. He simply sat and waited for me to serve him. I prepared his scrambled eggs, his black coffee, his 2 slices of toast, all in absolute silence. He ate while responding to emails, treating me as if I were invisible. At 7:30 a.m., Savannah arrived. Today she wore a tight yellow dress and high heels that clicked on the floor like hammer blows. She looked radiant as always. I wonder if she ever notices the bruises, the marks on my arms, the way I flinch every time Ethan raises his voice. "Good morning, Mrs. Davis," she said with her practiced, plastic smile. "How are you feeling today?" "Fine, thank you," I lied as always. "Are you going to have some breakfast?" "Just a coffee, please," she replied. "A light one with artificial sweetener." As I poured her coffee, I noticed her casually observing me. Her eyes lingered on my swollen lip, on the bruise peeking from my blouse collar. For a moment I thought she might inquire about my injuries, but instead, she quickly looked away and returned to her phone. Ethan finished his breakfast and looked at me intently. "Remember what I told you last night, Mom? Savannah is bringing 3 of her friends over for lunch. I want you to prepare something special. Seafood, pasta, Caesar salad, desserts, and buy some white wine, the good stuff, not that cheap garbage you're used to buying." He handed me 3 $20 bills, as if it were a magnanimous gesture. $60 to prepare a lunch for 5 people, when he spends that much on a single shirt. "And one more thing," he added, leaning in to whisper in my ear while Savannah was distracted. "Put on that makeup I bought you. Cover those marks well. If any of her friends ask anything strange, if they make any comment about your appearance, you're going to regret it. Do you understand me?" I nodded, feeling my hands tremble slightly. He smiled, kissed my forehead like the dutiful son he pretends to be, and they departed. The moment the door closed, I collapsed into a kitchen chair. $60 for an elaborate lunch. Fresh seafood costs at least $30 a pound. A decent bottle of wine another $20. How am I supposed to perform miracles with such meager funds? But it wasn't just the money that was distressing. It was the crushing pressure of having to appear normal in front of Savannah's friends, of pretending to be the happy mother-in-law of a perfect family, when the reality is that I'm a battered woman trapped in my own home. I studied my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. My lip was swollen and purple. A small cut marred the corner of my mouth. My eyes were red and puffy from crying. The bruise on my neck resembled a dark stain spreading towards my collarbone. I opened the makeup Ethan had given me. An expensive imported foundation, the type elegant women like Savannah use daily. I began applying it meticulously, concealing every mark, every bruise, every piece of evidence of the reality within these walls. As I applied the makeup, I couldn't help but recall the countless times I performed this ritual before. How many mornings had I woken up to hide bruises, to concoct excuses about falls and accidents? I tripped on the table. The closet door slipped from my hand. I fell down the stairs. One lie after another, all to protect my son's reputation. I went shopping, my list in hand and my face flawlessly made up. At the supermarket, I stretched those $60 as far as I could. I purchased frozen shrimp instead of fresh prawns. The cheapest acceptable wine. Pasta on sale. Every penny counted. As I waited in line to pay, an older woman approached me. It was Clarice, my next-door neighbor, a widow in her 60s, who has always been kind to me. "Hello, Monica Davis," she said with a warm smile. "How are you doing, dear? I haven't seen you in the yard lately." "Hello, Clarice," I said. "I'm fine, thanks. I've just been really busy with things around the house." She looked at me intently, and I noticed her gaze lingering on my lip despite the makeup. "Did you hurt your mouth?" she asked with genuine concern. My heart lurched. "No, it's nothing," I lied. "I just bumped into the closet door last night. You know how clumsy I am." Clarice frowned but didn't press the issue. "Well, if you ever need anything, you know where I live. I'm always home in the afternoons." Her words resonated deeply. It had been so long since anyone had offered genuine help, since anyone had treated me with true kindness. For a moment I was tempted to reveal everything, to plead for her assistance, to confess the nightmare I was enduring. But Ethan's voice echoed in my mind. Asterisk, if you ever open your mouth, if you tell anyone what happens here, you're going to regret it. No one will believe you. You're just a crazy old woman living off her son's charity. "Thank you, Clarice," I said simply. "You're very kind." I returned home and began cooking frantically. Everything had to be ready by noon when Savannah and her friends arrived. I cleaned the house meticulously, set the table with my finest china, and arranged flowers in. "Need any help?" she asked, her eyes searching for a private moment to speak. "No thanks, everything's under control," I replied, pointedly avoiding her gaze. "Monica Davis," she said softly, using my real name for the first time that afternoon. "Are you okay? You seem different." For a fleeting moment, my carefully constructed defenses crumbled. I ached to hug her, to pour out everything, to beg for her assistance. But then the distinct sound of Ethan's keys in the front door cut through the air. He was home from work earlier than usual. "Everything's fine, Evelyn," I said quickly, my voice tight. "I'm just a little tired." Ethan entered the dining room, his perfect smile, the one reserved for visitors, already in place. He greeted the women with practiced elegance, bestowing a kiss on Savannah's cheek before his gaze landed on me with a nod of approval. The lunch had gone precisely as he'd planned. "How are the most beautiful ladies from the office doing?" he inquired, his public charisma a carefully crafted facade. "I hope my mother took good care of you." "Excellently," Beatrice replied. "Your mother is charming." Ethan placed his hand on my shoulder, a gesture that instantly caused me to tense. He felt my reaction, his grip tightening slightly, a silent warning. "She's the best mother in the world," he said. his fingers digging into my shoulder through my blouse. Always looking out for everyone. Always sacrificing herself for the family. After dessert, the women began to say their goodbyes. Evelyn was the last to leave. Before stepping out the door, she grasped my hand. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Davis," she announced loudly enough for Ethan to hear. Then in a barely audible whisper close to my ear she added, "We'll see each other soon." The moment the door closed behind them, Ethan's demeanor shifted dramatically. The mask of the perfect son vanished, replaced by the monstrous persona he usually concealed. "You did well," he said coldly. "For once you didn't embarrass me." It wasn't a compliment. It was a stark confirmation that I'd fulfilled my duties as his servant. While I busied myself clearing the dishes and cleaning the dining room, he retreated to his room to change his clothes. Before leaving, however, he delivered a chilling reminder. "By the way, the technician is coming tomorrow to check your computer. He says you've been browsing some strange websites." A wave of icy dread washed over me. I didn't own a computer. I only used his when necessary. And the only strange sites I'd visited recently were those offering information on domestic abuse, shelters for battered women, and emergency helplines. He knew I'd been seeking information. He knew I was contemplating asking for help. Just then my phone rang. It was the accountant from Ethan's company again. "Mrs. Davis, can you come in at 3 this afternoon? It's urgent." I glanced at the clock. Ethan was likely napping in his room. This was my chance. "Yes," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'll be there." I grabbed my keys and purse and silently slipped out of the house. I had no idea what awaited me at the office, but a profound sense that my life was on the verge of irrevocable change settled over me. As I walked towards the bus stop, Evelyn's words echoed in my mind, "We'll see each other soon." My sister had noticed something amiss, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, a tiny spark of hope flickered within me. The office building where Ethan worked was an imposing modern skyscraper, all glass and steel, dominating the downtown skyline. I'd never been there before. For years, he'd kept his work life utterly separate from mine, as if it were a closely guarded secret I wasn't entitled to know. I ascended to the 18th floor, home to the offices of Northern Business Corporation. The receptionist, a young woman with a practiced professional smile, directed me to the accountant's office. My heart pounded so fiercely, I feared everyone could hear it. Mrs. Davis, a man in his 50s, impeccably dressed in a formal suit and sporting glasses, greeted me. "I'm Adrian Castillo, the general accountant for the company. Thank you for coming so promptly." I sat opposite his desk, attempting to project an air of calm despite the tremor coursing through me. His eyes held a gravity that only intensified my apprehension. "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions about your bank account," he began, opening a file brimming with documents. "Specifically, about some activity we've detected in the last few months." "I don't understand," I stammered, my voice trembling. "What does my account have to do with the company?" Adrian looked at me with a blend of pity and concern. "Mrs. Davis, we've discovered that your son, Ethan, has been using company funds to make transfers to your personal bank account. Transfers that are then promptly withdrawn." The force of the revelation struck me like a physical blow. That can't be true. Ethan is an exemplary employee. He would never do something like that. "I'm afraid he has," Adrian said gently, presenting a series of damning documents. "In the last 6 months, he's diverted over $50,000 in corporate funds. The money initially appears in his personal account, but is immediately transferred to the joint account he shares with you." My world imploded. $50,000. My son wasn't just physically abusing me. He was using me as an unwitting accomplice in his elaborate thefts. "But I didn't know anything," I cried desperately. "He manages my entire bank account. I don't authorize any transfers." "We know," Adrian said softly. "That's why I called you before pursuing legal action. We need you to file a formal complaint for the misuse of your bank account. It's the only way to clear your name in this matter." A wave of nausea overcame me. I was not only a victim of domestic violence but now also a victim of financial fraud. And worst of all, my own son had manipulated me into becoming his accomplice without my knowledge. What will happen to Ethan? I asked, already knowing the grim answer. If you file the complaint, he will be arrested for embezzlement of corporate funds and fraudulent use of bank accounts. These are serious crimes that carry a sentence of between 5 and 10 years in prison. I left the office in a state of utter shock. I wandered the downtown streets for hours, aimlessly trying to process the overwhelming information. My son was a thief, a criminal, and I had been his unwitting tool. When I finally arrived home, it was 6 p.m. Ethan was in the living room, watching television as if it were an ordinary day. Upon seeing me, he regarded me with his usual air of superiority. "Where have you been?" he demanded accusingly. "I got home from work and you weren't here." The house was a mess after lunch. For the first time in years, I met his gaze directly without flinching. "I was at your office." His expression instantly altered. The mask of control cracked for a fraction of a second, revealing the flicker of fear in his eyes. "What did you say?" "I was at your office, Ethan. I spoke with the accountant. I know what you've been doing." He rose slowly from the couch, like a predator preparing to strike. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. I think you're confused." $50,000? I said, my voice growing firmer. $50,000 you stole from your company using my bank account. Ethan approached me, but for the first time in a long time I didn't recoil. Something had shifted within me that afternoon. Perhaps it was the knowledge that I wasn't alone, that others knew the truth. "Listen to me, you stupid old woman," he hissed, his voice a low, menacing growl. "You have no idea what you're saying. That money is rightfully mine. You owe me for everything I've invested in you over these years. The food you eat, the roof over your head, the clothes you wear." "With my own money," I retorted, my voice rising. "My pension, my savings, the money I earned working for 40 years. He grabbed my arm, but this time I didn't remain silent. "Let go of me," I screamed, summoning every ounce of strength I possessed. His surprise at my unexpected defiance caused him to release his grip. For 3 years I'd been his silent victim. And now for the first time I was screaming at him. "You're crazy," he snarled, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "No one will believe you. You're a senile old woman who doesn't even know what she's saying." "The accountant believed me," I said. "The documents speak for themselves. The transfers are recorded. Everything is documented." Ethan fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then, his expression hardened further. "If you open your mouth, if you file any kind of complaint, I swear I'll destroy you." He leaned closer, his threat a venomous whisper. "This house is also in my name. I can kick you out on the street tomorrow, and without my help, without my money, you'll die alone like a dog." But for the first time his threats didn't paralyze me with terror. A new strength previously unknown to me had taken root. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Ethan," I declared. And as the words left my lips, I realized it was true. For the first time in 3 years I wasn't afraid of him. He raised his hand to strike me, but at that precise moment the doorbell rang. It was Clarice, my neighbor. "Monica Davis. Monica Davis, is everything all right?" I heard screaming. Ethan slowly lowered his hand. He couldn't strike me with a witness present. His reputation was too precious to risk. "Go see what she wants," he ground out through gritted teeth. "And you'd better not say anything strange." I approached the door, my legs trembling. Clarice stood there, her expression etched with worry, clutching a casserole dish. "Hello, dear," she said. "I brought you some stew I made, but I heard loud voices and got worried." Over her shoulder I saw another woman, Evelyn, my sister. She was dressed casually, her hair pulled back, but I recognized her instantly. "Hello," Evelyn said, feigning a casual acquaintance. "I'm new to the neighborhood and was just visiting Mrs. Davis. I hope we're not bothering you." Ethan materialized behind me, his artificial smile perfectly in place. No problem at all, ladies. My mother was a little worked up because she burned the dinner. You know how older women get about these things. Clarice looked at him with an indecipherable expression. Right, she said. Well, Monica Davis, here's the food. And remember, if you need anything at all, I'm right next door. Evelyn looked me directly in the eyes. Yes, Mrs. Davis. Anything you need, day or night. After they left, Ethan slammed the door shut. Damn nosy old women, he muttered. But this isn't over. Tomorrow we're going to the bank together, and you're going to sign all the papers I tell you to. You're going to retract the complaint you probably already filed, and you're going to say it was all a big misunderstanding. No, I said simply. What do you mean, no? I'm not going to sign anything. I'm not going to retract any complaint, and I'm not going to be an accomplice in your thefts anymore. Ethan's gaze burned into me with a fury I'd never witnessed before. It was as if he'd finally cast off all his masks, revealing his true monstrous nature. Fine, he said, his calm tone far more terrifying than any shouting. If that's how you want to play, we'll play. But I'm warning you. When I'm done with you, you're going to wish you were never born. I didn't sleep at all that night. Ethan remained locked in his room, but I could hear him on the phone for hours. I didn't know what he was planning, but I knew I had to prepare for the worst. At 3 a.m., I heard a strange noise in the yard. Peeking out the window, I saw a figure moving among the bushes. Clarice, seemingly setting something up near my window. The next day, I understood her actions. She'd placed a small security camera, discreetly hidden among the plants, pointed directly at my house. My neighbor knew something was terribly wrong and was meticulously documenting everything. The following day dawned gray and rainy, mirroring the storm brewing in my life. Ethan rose earlier than usual at 5 a.m. I heard him moving around the house, whispering on the phone, preparing something that filled me with apprehension. When I went to the kitchen, he was already dressed in his best suit, the black one he wore for important meetings, his hair perfectly combed, his tie impeccably knotted. He looked like the successful executive everyone believed him to be, not the monster inhabiting my home. Good morning, Mom, he said, his voice unnervingly sweet, almost sing-song. I hope you slept well. That saccharine sweetness sent shivers down my spine. I knew my son well enough to recognize that when he was overly nice, it was a prelude to something truly terrible. Yes, I lied, serving him his coffee as usual. Good, he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Because today is going to be a very special day. I've been thinking about our conversation from yesterday all night. He sat at the table and ate breakfast calmly, as if we were a normal family. But something about his demeanor kept me on high alert. I've decided that you're right, he continued. Maybe I've been too hard on you. After all, you're my mother, and you deserve respect. His words completely disoriented me. Ethan admitting he was wrong, asking for forgiveness? It was so utterly out of character that I immediately recognized it as a trap. That's why, he continued, spreading butter on his toast, we're going to go to the bank together today. We're going to clear up this whole misunderstanding with my company. You're going to explain that you authorized all the transfers, that you knew exactly what was happening with your money. There it was. The true reason for his feigned kindness. I'm not going to do that, Ethan, I said, striving to keep my voice steady. His smile slowly vanished. Of course you are, Mom, because if you don't, some very unpleasant things are going to happen. Are you threatening me? No, Mom, he said, finishing his coffee. I'm explaining reality to you. Look around you. This house, this table you have breakfast at, the bed you sleep in, the food you eat. All of this is possible because I allow it. And if I don't allow it anymore. He left the sentence hanging, but the message was chillingly clear. He would leave me destitute if I didn't comply. Also, he added, taking out his phone, I've been thinking about calling some doctors. I know doctors who specialize in older people with mental problems like senile dementia. You know, it's very sad when mothers start making up stories, accusing their own sons of terrible things. My blood ran cold. Not only was he threatening to evict me, but to have me declared insane, incompetent, rendering my testimony worthless. There are several witnesses who can confirm your deteriorated mental state, he continued in that cold, calculating voice. Savannah, for example. I just told her yesterday how confused you've been lately. The friends who came to lunch also noticed something strange about you. It was a lie, a blatant fabrication, but he was so convincing that for a moment, I actually doubted my own sanity. That was the insidious nature of his manipulation. He made me question everything, even my own perception of reality. So we're going to the bank at 10 o'clock, he said, rising from the table. You're going to put on your best dress. You're going to get all fixed up, and you're going to smile while you sign all the papers they put in front of you. Understand? I didn't answer, simply beginning to clear the breakfast dishes, buying myself precious time to think. I'm talking to you, he shouted, all traces of his false kindness gone. Understood? Understood? Understood, I mumbled, hating myself for my cowardice. Ethan went to his office, but before leaving, he delivered a final warning. Don't even think about leaving this house. Don't even think about talking on the phone with anyone. I'll be back at 9:30 to take you to the bank. The moment the door closed, I collapsed into a kitchen chair and wept, not tears of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated rage. Rage against him, but more intensely rage against myself for allowing things to reach this catastrophic point. I remained there for several minutes until a soft knock came at the back door. It was Clarice, her face etched with urgency. Monica Davis, open up fast, she whispered through the glass. It's important. I opened the door, and she quickly entered, glancing around to ensure we were alone. I heard everything, she said without preamble. I have the camera set up near your kitchen window. I recorded your whole conversation with your son. My heart leaped. Everything. Everything, she repeated. The threats, the blackmail, the way he talked to you. I have evidence that he's forcing you to lie about the stolen money. For the first time in days, a spark of genuine hope ignited within me. What can we do with that? Clarice smiled. I have a friend who works at the district attorney's office. Her name is Brenda, and she specializes in domestic abuse and financial fraud cases. But I need you to come with me right now. I can't, I said, fear threatening to overwhelm me again. Ethan told me not to leave the house. If you go to that bank today and you sign those papers, Clarice said, taking my hands, your son will be free of all charges. He'll keep stealing money and he'll keep abusing you. But on top of that, you'll be considered a willing accomplice in his thefts. She was right. If I signed those papers, I wouldn't just lose my dignity. I'd become a criminal in the eyes of the law. But if I don't go, I whispered, my voice trembling, he'll follow through on his threats. He'll kick me out of the house. He'll say I'm crazy. He won't be able to do any of that, Clarice interrupted, because we're going to present the evidence before he can act. Brenda told me that with the recordings I have, they can arrest him immediately. I looked at the clock. Ethan would be back in an hour. Are you sure your friend can help me? Completely sure, but we have to go now, Monica Davis. It's our only chance. I made a decision that would irrevocably alter the course of my life. I went to my room, grabbed my purse containing my most important documents, and left that house with Clarice. As we walked to her car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Courage. For the first time, I was taking control of my own life. The district attorney's office was a typical government building, with long corridors and small, impersonal offices. Brenda turned out to be a woman in her 40s, with an intelligent gaze and a reassuring manner of speaking. Mrs. Davis, she said after reviewing the recordings Clarice had brought, what your son is doing constitutes multiple crimes. Domestic abuse, financial fraud, blackmail, and attempted obstruction of justice. What does that mean? I asked. It means we can arrest him today, Brenda replied. But I need you to file a formal complaint for all these crimes. Are you willing to do that? I looked at the clock. In 15 minutes, Ethan would arrive to take me to the bank. When he realized I wasn't there, His rage would be terrifying. Yes, I said, my voice growing stronger. I'm ready to file the complaint. Brenda smiled. Perfect. While you fill out the papers, I'll coordinate with the police to have them go and arrest your son. Do you know where he is right now? He should be arriving at my house, I said. He said he'd pick me up at 9:30. Even better, Brenda said, picking up her phone. It's easier to arrest him at a known location. While I completed the complaint forms, Brenda coordinated with the police. Clarice stayed with me, holding my hand, providing unwavering support. Are you sure about this, Monica Davis? She asked. Once we sign these papers, there's no turning back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied. At 10:30, Brenda's phone rang. It was the police, confirming that they had arrested Ethan at my house. They found him screaming like a madman, smashing things, frantically searching for me. He's in custody, Brenda told me. The charges are serious. It's very likely he won't be able to get bail. I felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in 3 years, I knew I was going to sleep without fear. When we returned to my house that afternoon, the place resembled a battlefield. Ethan had destroyed practically everything in his path before the police apprehended him. Couch cushions were ripped, broken dishes littered the kitchen floor, and the family photos that once adorned the walls lay in shattered pieces. My God, Clarice whispered, surveying the devastation. How could he do all this in such a short time? I knew the answer. I knew the blind, destructive fury that consumed Ethan when things didn't go his way. I'd seen that rage before, but never directed at inanimate objects. Usually, I was the target of his anger. Brenda, who had accompanied us to document the damage, was taking photographs. This will serve as additional evidence of his violent behavior, she explained. Destruction of property during an episode of rage. The judge will see exactly what kind of person your son is. While we cleaned up the broken glass and the remnants of my former life, my phone rang insistently. It was an unknown number. Don't answer it, Brenda warned. It's probably him calling from jail. Let it go to voicemail. Indeed, when I checked the messages, it was Ethan's voice, but it sounded completely different. No longer the threatening monster from the morning, but the frightened child he used to feign when he wanted to manipulate me. Mom. His voice cracked in the recording. Mom, please come get me out of here. It was all a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt you. You know I love you. You're the most important thing in my life. Please, Mom, don't let me rot in this jail. I'm your son, your only son. He'd left 5 similar messages, each more desperate than the last. In the final one, he was actually crying. Brenda explained it was all part of his manipulation tactic. First, violence and threats. Now, victimhood and guilt. A classic abuser's pattern. Even though I understood the situation logically, hearing my son cry shattered me. For 35 years he'd been my baby, my entire reason for being. It was incredibly difficult to reconcile the monster he'd become with the boy he once was. Are you okay? Clarice asked, noticing my distress. It's complicated, I admitted. I know I did the right thing, but he's still my son. That night, Clarice insisted I stay at her place. Your house isn't safe right now, she said. Ethan has connections, maybe even Savannah involved. Someone might seek revenge. She was right. In the voicemails, Ethan mentioned Savannah was handling things externally. I didn't know precisely what that meant, but I was terrified to find out. Clarice's house was small but comfortable. It had a guest room with a twin bed and a small desk, her daughter's old room before she married, she explained. Now it's yours for as long as you need it. For the first time in 3 years I slept without fear. No more worrying about Ethan's footsteps in the hallway, his late-night screaming, or waking up to his punches. It was strange, unsettling even. Peace can be frightening when you're unaccustomed to it. The next day Brenda called early with news. Ethan's bail hearing is at 2 p.m. today, she said. The judge would decide if he could be released while awaiting trial. What are the chances he'll be released? I asked, fear creeping back in. With the evidence we have, very slim, Brenda replied. But I need you to testify. Your testimony is crucial for the judge to understand the danger he poses. The hearing took place in a small courtroom. Ethan sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. When he saw me, his expression transformed completely. He wasn't the remorseful child from the voicemails. He radiated contained fury. Savannah sat in the gallery, elegantly dressed as always, but looking exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days. When our eyes met, I saw something unexpected: shame. The judge, a man in his 60s, had a serious but fair demeanor. He reviewed the documents before proceeding. Mrs. Davis, he said when it was my turn, tell me in your own words what you've endured at home these past few years. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I recounted the beatings, the financial control, the threats, the constant humiliation. My voice wavered at times, but I persevered. When I mentioned the $50,000 he'd stolen, Ethan visibly tensed. His lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit, tried repeatedly to object, but the judge silenced him. And what did your son say yesterday morning concerning your testimony? The judge asked. He threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent if I didn't lie for him, I said. He said he'd leave me homeless and penniless. The judge reviewed the recordings Clarice had made. He listened intently with headphones while the courtroom fell silent. Mr. Ethan Davis, the judge stated when he finished, the evidence reveals a clear pattern of domestic abuse, financial fraud, and witness intimidation. Considering the severity of the charges and the risk you pose to the victim, your request for bail is denied. You will remain in custody until your trial. Ethan exploded. This is an injustice, he shouted, standing. That crazy old woman is lying. I'm a respectable citizen. I have rights. The guards had to restrain him as he continued to scream. You're going to regret this, Mom. When I get out, I'm going to make you pay for every day I spend in this jail. His threats reverberated through the courtroom, perfectly corroborating my testimony about his violent nature. After the hearing, Savannah approached me. Mrs. Davis, she said, her voice trembling, I need to talk to you. Brenda and Clarice tensed, but I signaled I was all right. What do you want, Savannah? I asked. I want to apologize, she said. And for the first time, her voice sounded genuinely remorseful. I knew something wasn't right in that house. I heard the screaming. I saw your bruises. I noticed how you flinched whenever he raised his voice. Then why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because I was scared, she admitted. Ethan threatened me to. He said if I betrayed him, he'd destroy my career, my reputation. I was a coward. I let you suffer alone because I was afraid of losing my comfortable life. Her eyes filled with tears. When they arrested him, I found documents in his home office. He wasn't just stealing from his company. He was stealing from my personal account too. We've been married for 2 years, and I never knew he was a fraudster. What are you going to do now? I asked. I'm filing for divorce immediately, she said with determination. And I'm going to testify against him at his trial. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I want to cooperate with the DA's office to make him pay for everything he did to us. As we left the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, genuine hope. Not only had I escaped my son, but I now had allies in my fight for justice. That afternoon, walking back to Clarice's, Brenda shared more good news. The company where Ethan worked wants to reach a settlement, she said. They're willing to drop additional charges against you if you cooperate in recovering the stolen money. And in recognition of your victimhood, they'll pay you $20,000 in compensation. $20,000, I whispered. It was more money than I'd had in 3 years. What about my house? I asked. Ethan said it was in his name too. We checked the documents, Brenda said, smiling. Your son lied. The deed is still solely in your name. He forged some papers, but legally the house is entirely yours. For the first time in a long time, I began to envision a possible future. A future free from fear, where I could make my own decisions, where I could be the master of my own destiny. But I also knew Ethan wouldn't give up easily. His threats at the hearing were crystal clear. This war was far from over. 3 weeks after Ethan's arrest, my life had transformed dramatically, but not in the way I anticipated. While physically safe at Clarice's, psychologically, I remained his prisoner. A constant paranoia kept me awake most nights. Every sound made me jump. Every car stopping outside sent me racing to the window. Every unknown call triggered a panic attack. Brenda explained it was normal. After years of abuse, fear doesn't vanish overnight. It's post-traumatic stress disorder, she said. Your mind and body are used to constant alert. Takes time to heal. But it was more than simple trauma. Ethan had managed to send me messages from jail, messages that chilled me to the core. The first arrived from a lawyer who wasn't his official representative. It was a handwritten letter, in his familiar script. Dear Mom, it read, I hope you're enjoying your little victory. I hope you feel very brave for betraying me. But I want you to know something. This isn't over. I know things about you that no one else knows. Secrets you kept for 40 years working at that law firm. Things that could ruin not only your reputation but your freedom. My heart lurched. What secrets? During my 40 years as a secretary at Sullivan & Associates, I'd handled confidential information, but I'd never done anything illegal. Remember the Williams versus the state case, Mom? The one from 15 years ago? I found the documents you hid. The ones you altered to help Mr. Sullivan win that multi-million-dollar case. Documents that, if revealed, could send you to prison for obstruction of justice. My hands shook violently. I vaguely remembered the Williams case. It had been a difficult case where the firm represented a pharmaceutical company, accused of concealing fatal side effects of a drug. Mr. Sullivan had asked me to reorganize some documents, removing certain memos that could harm his client. I thought it was standard procedure, part of my job. I never fully grasped the legal ramifications of my actions. But Ethan was right. I had technically altered evidence in a court case. I have copies of everything, Mom. And if you don't drop the charges, if you don't publicly apologize for your lies, those documents are going to end up in the DA's hands. Imagine the headlines. 61-year-old secretary arrested for complicity in covering up drug deaths. The rest of the letter detailed exactly how he'd destroy my life if I didn't comply. He had media contacts, journalists who'd pay handsomely for a story of judicial corruption. My photo would be in every newspaper. My name would be forever tarnished by scandal. When Clarice found me sobbing with the letter, she immediately called Brenda. This is clear blackmail, Brenda said after reading it. But we need to know if his threats have any basis. What exactly do you remember about the Williams case? I told her everything, Mr. Sullivan's instructions, the reorganization of the documents. Did you know what you were doing could be illegal? She asked. No, I replied honestly. I was just following orders. Mr. Sullivan said it was standard procedure to protect client confidentiality. Brenda sighed. Legally, ignorance isn't an excuse. If you altered evidence, even without criminal intent, you technically committed a crime. My world crumbled again. Just when I thought I'd escaped Ethan's clutches, he'd found another way to control me. What do? I asked desperately. If I drop the charges, he gets out and he'll kill me. If I don't, I go to jail for something I did 15 years ago without knowing it was illegal. First, calm down, Brenda said. Second, we're going to investigate exactly what documents your son has and how he got them. And third, we're going to find ways to minimize the legal damage if evidence exists against you. The following days were a legal nightmare. Brenda worked with lawyers specializing in old cases to review the entire Williams case file. Meanwhile, I lived in constant terror, expecting arrest at any moment. Clarice was my salvation during those dark weeks. She provided refuge, became the sister I never had. Every night, she sat with me as I cried, made chamomile tea to help me sleep, and constantly reassured me that I wasn't alone. No matter what happens, she'd say, we'll face it together. You're not that scared woman who lived under your son's terror anymore. But I felt exactly like that scared woman. Ethan had achieved his goal. He'd returned me to the fear and hopelessness that had defined my life for 3 years. A week later, a second letter arrived, even more cruel than the first. I see you haven't learned your lesson, Mom, it said. I see you still think you can defy me. That's fine. Now everyone's going to find out what kind of person you really are. Along with the letter was an envelope containing photographs, documents from Sullivan and Associates, with my handwriting, altered dates, missing pages. These photos will be in the newspaper tomorrow night. If you don't visit me in jail before Friday, you'll come alone, without lawyers, without witnesses, and you'll bring a signed letter dropping all charges against me, claiming it was all a misunderstanding caused by your mental deterioration. My mental deterioration, that accusation chilled me to the bone. If you don't come, not only will these photos be in the newspapers, but you'll also see the recordings. Recordings? What recordings? Did you think I didn't know you had cameras installed in the house, Mom? Did you think I was that stupid? I have recordings too. Recordings of you accepting cash from clients, money you never reported as income. Tax evasion, Mom. Another 15 years in prison. This wasn't just blackmail. It was all-out psychological warfare. Ethan had been preparing for this for months, maybe years. He'd gathered evidence, planned every move, anticipated my rebellion. When Brenda read the second letter, her expression turned grim. Monica Davis, I need the complete truth about your time at the firm. Anything you might have done, any irregularities, any money you received outside your salary. I told her about the yearly cash Christmas bonuses from Mr. Sullivan, money I'd never declared because I considered them personal gifts. I told her about cash tips from grateful clients, money I hadn't reported because I didn't know I had to. In total, she asked, how much money are we talking about over 40 years? Maybe $1,000, I said, ashamed. Brenda quickly calculated. With interest and penalties, we'd be looking at a tax debt of around $40,000. But the most serious issue was that it was technically tax evasion. My son had built a perfect trap. If I reported him, he'd destroy me with evidence of my own failings. If I didn't, he'd remain free to abuse and steal from me. There's a third option, Brenda said after a long pause. An option neither of you will expect. We get ahead of him. We voluntarily confess all your mistakes before he can use them as blackmail. And we use that confession to show that your son is a master manipulator who exerts psychological control over his victims, even from jail. It was a risky gamble. It meant publicly admitting to crimes, facing potential legal consequences, and enduring public humiliation. But it also meant removing Ethan's primary weapon, my secret. If we do this, Brenda continued, your son loses all power over you. He can no longer blackmail you because there's nothing left to hide. I looked out the window at my empty, shattered house across the street. That house represented my past, my mistakes, my fears, but it also represented my future, my freedom, my chance to start over. Let's do it, I finally said. I'm tired of living in fear. I'm tired of my son controlling my life from a jail cell. Brenda smiled. Tomorrow we're going to give Ethan the surprise of his life. The day we decided to fight back arrived sooner than I expected. Brenda had organized a press conference for 2 p.m., where I would voluntarily confess my past mistakes before Ethan could use them against me. It was risky, but our only chance to regain control. That morning, I woke with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Ethan's arrest, I wasn't afraid. I'd made a decision that would change my life forever, and strangely, I felt at peace. Clarice helped me prepare. I put on my most serious gray dress, the one I wore for formal occasions at the firm. I applied a little makeup, enough to look presentable, but without trying to hide who I really was. Are you sure about this, Monica Davis? Clarice asked for the 5th time that morning. Once you say those words publicly, there's no going back. I'm absolutely sure, I replied, surprised by the firmness of my voice. For 3 years I lived as a prisoner in my own home out of fear of the consequences. I'm not going to remain a prisoner of my past mistakes. At noon, Brenda called with unexpected news. Monica Davis, something extraordinary just happened. Raphael Miller, Ethan's boss, wants to talk to you before the press conference. Raphael was the man who discovered Ethan's thefts, the same man who'd turned pale when he learned the truth. I didn't understand why he wanted to speak with me. We met in Brenda's office. Raphael, a man in his 50s with graying hair, commanded respect. When he saw me, he rose immediately. "Mrs. Davis," he said, his voice warm but serious, "first I want to apologize. If I'd supervised Ethan better, if I'd paid attention to the red flags, maybe we could have prevented you from suffering so much." His words surprised me. "You had no way of knowing what was happening in my house." "Maybe not," Raphael said, sitting down. "But I did have a way of knowing something strange was going on with the company's finances. Your son's thefts didn't start 6 months ago. They started 2 years ago." My heart stopped. 2 years? Raphael confirmed. "Small amounts at first, so small we attributed them to accounting errors. But when we investigated after your complaint, we discovered he'd been systematically stealing for a long time." Brenda leaned forward. "How much money are we talking about in total?" $130,000, Raphael said. "Which went directly to accounts he controlled, including your bank account." I felt nauseous. Not only had I been a victim of physical and psychological abuse, but I'd been an unwitting tool in a massive robbery for 2 years. "But there's more," Raphael continued. "When Ethan was arrested, our legal department investigated further. We discovered he'd been forging reports, manipulating contracts, and even selling the company's confidential information to competitors." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Raphael smiled for the first time. "Because we want to offer you a job, Mrs. Davis. During our investigation, we reviewed your work history. 40 years at Sullivan & Associates, impeccable references, experience with complex cases. We need someone with your experience to help us rebuild everything your son destroyed." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of arrest and public humiliation, I was being offered a fresh start. "The salary would be $4,000 a month," Raphael continued, "plus health benefits, plus a special compensation of $50,000 as recognition for the damage we unintentionally caused you. $4,000 a month was more than triple my current pension. $50,000 in compensation. Suddenly my future didn't seem so hopeless. "But there's one condition," Raphael added. "We need you to testify at your son's trial. Your testimony will be crucial to ensuring he pays for all his crimes, not just the ones against you." "Of course," I said without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes." At 2 p.m., the press room was packed with journalists, cameras, and microphones. Brenda had invited the local media, explaining that a domestic violence victim would be making an important statement about blackmail from jail. When I sat in front of those cameras, I felt a different kind of fear. Not fear of Ethan, not fear of beatings or threats, but fear of freedom, fear of the responsibility of owning my own life. "My name is Monica Davis, I began, looking directly into the cameras. "I'm 61 years old, and for the last 3 years, I've been a victim of domestic violence perpetrated by my son Ethan Davis." I told my entire story: the beatings, the financial control, the threats, the systematic theft. But I also told the part Ethan expected me to keep secret. "During my 40 years working as a secretary at Sullivan & Associates, I made mistakes," I said, my voice growing firmer with each word. "Mistakes I didn't know were illegal at the time, but that I now recognize as such." I explained the Williams case, the altered documents, the unreported money, everything. I held nothing back. "My son discovered these mistakes, and he's been using them to blackmail me from jail. He threatened to publicly expose me if I didn't drop the charges against him. Today, I'm here to take that weapon away from him. I'd rather face the consequences of my mistakes than continue to be a victim of his manipulation." The room was utterly silent. Journalists scribbled furiously. Cameras recorded every word. "I want to send a message to all women being abused by their sons, husbands, or partners," I continued. Emotional blackmail, financial control, threats of exposure. They're all forms of abuse. Don't let the fear of public judgment keep you a prisoner. Freedom is worth more than reputation. After the press conference, Brenda informed me the DA's office decided not to press charges against me for my past mistakes. Your voluntary confession, combined with the fact that you were a victim of blackmail, makes you a more valuable witness than a defendant, she explained. That night, for the first time in months, I returned to sleep in my own house. Clarice insisted on staying with me for the first few nights until I felt completely safe. As I lay in my own bed in my own house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Total control over my own life. Ethan was still in jail, facing multiple charges that would likely keep him there for many years. His blackmail had lost all its power because I no longer had anything to hide. My phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, a jail number, but this time I wasn't afraid to answer. Mom! It was Ethan's voice, utterly devoid of its usual bravado. It was flat, defeated. I saw your press conference on the news. And what's your take on it? I asked, surprised by my own calm. You destroyed everything, he said, not with anger but with a profound sadness. You destroyed my last chance to get out of here. No, Ethan, I replied. You destroyed that chance the moment you decided to make me your victim. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Are you ever going to forgive me? He finally asked, the words hanging in the air between us. Someday, I said truthfully. When you take responsibility for your actions, when you actively seek help to change, when you truly understand the depth of the harm you've caused, someday I might be able to forgive you. But I'll never forget. I hung up and switched off my phone. Tomorrow marked the beginning of a new job, a new life. But tonight all I craved was the simple peace of sleeping soundly in my own home, free from fear, threats, and blackmail. For the first time in 3 long years I felt truly free. And while the journey had been agonizing, while I'd had to confront my own failings in the harsh glare of public scrutiny, and while I'd undeniably lost my relationship with my son, I knew deep down that I had made the right choice. Ethan had learned a brutal lesson, that victims can rise to become incredibly strong, that secrets lose their power when exposed to the light of truth, and that justice, though sometimes painfully slow, inevitably prevails. And I learned that it's never too late to reclaim your life, no matter how long you've lived in the suffocating shadows of fear and manipulation. This was my story of liberation, a testament to resilience and a beacon of hope, a story I hope will inspire other women to shatter their own chains, regardless of who forged them.